The next step in my process is to start drawing. I like to take my composition and move it around. Now you are seeing it from top down. I don't have the capabilities of split screening and recording from my viewpoint and top down so you can see what I'm doing on my paper. So what you are seeing isn't exactly what I am seeing. But I do like to rotate my card and try to find a composition I like. That's going to depend on where I place the candies, angles in which certain candies are moving, and so forth. Once I have a composition that I am enjoying looking at, I'm going to start sketching it on here. Now, paper orientation is important. Right now, looking at my composition from my viewpoint, my objects are closer together from top to bottom, and they are longer left to right. So I'm going to leave my paper in landscape view. If I had my composition turned enough that my objects are taking up more space vertically, top to bottom, and not as much space in a width area, left to right, then I would turn my paper into portrait view to draw. Our goal is to fill up as much space on our paper as possible. So once I have my items placed, my composition placed, and I've determined if I am drawing in landscape or portrait view, my next step is to start mapping out my objects. And we've gone over this in our sketchbook. This is where we simply take our items and we draw very light outlines of them using simple shapes and lines with not much detail. Before we move on to contour, this is how we plan out our composition. It is a fast drawing process. It allows me to overlap lines, move things, erase items without affecting my paper too much before I get into details. Working with the rule of thirds, I would like you to try to place at least one of your items within those focal areas. Remember, the focal areas are the parts of our composition in which our rule of third lines cross over each other. In my composition that I have arranged here, my lollipop could be very close to this area of emphasis. So I am going to begin by breaking down that item into some simple shapes and lines to start placing it. Once I've placed one item, then I start comparing the relationship of where the other items are to this one. It also helps that the lollipop is the closest thing to me. If you are choosing an item that is not close to you to be on an area of emphasis, you may want to lightly sketch where you want it to be in your composition, but I do suggest you start drawing with items closer to you. Once I have this planned out, I'm going to move on and start planning out some other items. So I have a Rolo sitting near my lollipop. It gets overlapped by the lollipop, and that tip sheet I gave you on drawing things in observation, number 6, gave the tip that, draw items that aren't seen. In this case, I know my Rolo is connected. These tapering straight sides are connected with a rounded bottom. So I'm going to go ahead and draw that right now through the lollipop. I'm also going to start some sketches as to where my pack of Smarties will be, because I do see that the Rolo overlaps those. And I'm going to start some lines for where those are located. Coming near the front here, I have a round Jolly Rancher, one of those dual tone ones that I have provided if you needed some items to draw. And I'm again going to break down parts of it and the packaging into some simple shapes and lines. Right behind it is a regular or normal Jolly Rancher, at least normal to me. This is the kind I'm more familiar with. And again, I'm going to lightly sketch about the size in relationship to the other items and its placement, using again some simple shapes, forms, and lines. So notice how far I am already in my composition. I've reached quite a bit of distance with my items. And I'm not providing a lot of detail. So if there is something I don't like or I made a mistake, then I can easily, again, draw over it or erase it without taking a lot of time. Behind my Smarties is a butterscotch candy. It's overlapped by the Smarties, so again, I'm going to draw through the Smarties to help me place the rest of the circle. It has some clear packaging, so some of it disappears into other items and background. So again, when I work with clear packaging, as I mentioned earlier in class, I look for some of the bright highlights created by the light source in our room. And it overlaps my last item, which is a Fruit Chew Tootsie Roll. So that is a rough map sketch of my composition. Once I finish this, if I find I don't like it, if I feel I didn't get a item onto my rule third emphasis area, if I feel maybe it's too far to the right or the left or too far down or too far up on my composition, then I will try another one. And I have shown you this already in class, in which I have multiple compositions that I have tried. After I try sketching my candy from one viewpoint, I will sometimes change viewpoints. So this one's a little bit similar. The difference is I have the Smartie going off in a more angled direction, a diagonal direction, instead of straight on like it is in my viewpoint right now. I had tried another one where I wanted the Smartie to be on one of those crossover points, but it left way too much empty space here. I don't want my items to necessarily be centered, but I also don't want my items to be, let me see if I can zoom in there. I also don't want my items to be so far off in one direction that I have a lot of extra empty space. Two ways to fix that is, one, fix the composition. Okay, just as I talked before, try rearranging your items, moving your card around, try a different composition, or as I did on the back with this composition, I enlarged the items. They do come a little bit higher up than I would like in this sketch. I had a little bit of extra room that I could move these down, but by making them larger, I filled up more space. So that is your step, is to map out the placement of your items, and don't be afraid to move your still life card around and look for new ways to arrange your composition.